Hi class, good late afternoon. So it's actually night already. So this study guide is going to be on muscular system, and so this CherNotes particularly is going to be about those superficial muscles. So there's like a few layers of those muscles that we're gonna discuss. So, and that pertains to your midterm. All right, so let's look at the muscles that are important for our class, not just for our class, but for other students who's not part of my class. They can also utilize this. So this big muscle, right, connections that connects to the upper thorax and to the chin, to the mandible, is the platysma muscle. So the muscles of the upper chest or the thorax is the Pectoralis Major. The two very distinguished muscles of the upper thorax are Pectoralis Major muscles, muscles of your chest. So the muscles of lower abdominum are external oblique muscles. So external oblique, and if I will remove one layer, there's going to be internal oblique muscles, which are these internal oblique muscles. And if I will remove another layer, there's going to be rectus abdominus muscles. Rectus, they going vertical. And if I will remove another muscle, so there's our horizontal transversus abdominus. So these are the four layers of lower abdominal muscle. So let me put it back. So here, if we look laterally, right, so lateral and almost posterior, but it's lateral side, we have serratus anterior, like those serratus muscles. They look like a dinosaur. Sartorius dinosaur. So that's the muscles of the lateral muscle of the upper chest. So let's look posteriorly, right, dorsally. So this huge rhomb is a trapezius, right, or a transverse trapezius. There's descending part, but all of them together collectively we call them trapezius muscles. So these muscles, the also huge muscles, are Latissimus Dorsi. If you will do a lot of pull-ups, you will have a prominent Latissimus Dorsi. These are the muscles. But we're only discussing superficial muscles. For our class, for our human biology class, you do not really need to know other muscles. There are 600 muscles. Trust me, you do not need to know the 4-hour class. So what I forgot to mention, right, so if I will isolate this, right, so you can see that the Pectoralis Major connected to the sternum and to the humerus. If we will also isolate external obliques, right, they're also connected to the hip bone, to the ilium part, to the pubic part, and also connected to costal ribs, and also connected to the sternum. So now let's look at the trapezius, right? So when we isolate them, they're connected to the scapula, right? They're connected to the scapula, and also connected to the vertebrates, or to the vertebral column, to those projections. And the Latissimus dorsi in the back, if we isolate them, they're connected to a humerus as well, and also to the vertebral column, to those processes over there. All right, so that's the muscles that we need to know. And serratus, right, if we isolate them, they're also connected to costal ribs and also connected to the scapula. All right, so let's talk about the muscles of the upper limb. So these are the deltoid muscles. There are 3 heads of the deltoid muscle, but not important, just collectively deltoid muscle. If we isolate deltoid, connected to the clavicle, connected to the scapula, and also connected to the humerus. So as we've seen, the upper thorax muscles connected to the humerus, connected to the brachii part of your arm, to the upper arm. All right, so now we go to actual bicep or bicep brachii. So there are two muscles, bicep, and if we isolate them, so they connected. So and proximally, so they connected these muscles connected to the scapula. That's where's the origin of the muscle, and the insertion of this muscle will be in the radius. So this is the lateral bone radius. So remember, insertion and origin. So the origin is the less movable part of a muscle structure, and the insertion is the more movable part. So if I will create a motion of this muscle together with its structure, so you can see it how the other muscles work together. So one group of muscles are agonists that perform the movement. They are prime mover. Then there are antagonists, like for example here, the triceps would be antagonists, but we do not really see triceps, that they should be here. And so the muscles that relax during a performance, and there are synergists, another group of muscles that support the entire structure. So obviously these muscles are not here, but that's the muscles working together and they helping one another. So another muscle that is important is brachialis. So if we will isolate brachialis, the brachialis right underneath the bicep. So again, origin is here in the humerus and less movable part, and the insertion in the radius bone. I'm sorry, in the ulna. This is the ulna. So the ulna insertion for this muscle, and that's the more movable part. And you can tell that this is the ulna based on this trochlear notch. And this is the olecranon, is your elbow. All right, so let's proceed further, the muscles that we are concerned only for our class. So this is brachioradialis. So brachio starts with brachy, and the radialis, it is the muscle, it's the bone, it's the radius bone. Again, insertion is here, and origin is here, and insertion is here. You do not need to know where the insertion, and you do not need to know where the origin. I just want pointing out and making sure that you will remember that origin is the less movable part of a muscle, and the insertion is the more movable part. So this would be the forearm would be the more movable part. Right, so that those muscles that we are concerned. So there's other bunch of muscles that are digitory muscles that are responsible for our digits, and the flexor carpi that are responsible for flexing our palm. So those muscles are not in our study group muscles. Right, so this is the muscles of the upper limb. So let's of the upper arm and the forearm. So muscles of the chest we cover, muscles of the abdomen we cover, muscles of the back we also covered. For only our class, and we're not discussing all those 600 muscles. So this gluteus maximus. So let me isolate the gluteus maximus. They connected to a femur and to the ilium, right, to this crest posteriorly. Let's look at the sartorius muscle. It's like a band that wraps around, and the origin of this muscle at the hip bone, and the insertion of that muscle right at the tibia, right? So if we will isolate this muscle, not the bone, if we'll isolate the sartorius muscle, so you see it is connected to the hip bone into the in the ilium part, all the way to the tibia. So now let's look at the thigh muscle. So these are the quadriceps femoris. There's like 4 of them. Collectively, that's where they are. And at posteriorly, there are hamstring muscles. Right, so also we're not breaking them down, just collectively. Hamstrings posteriorly, and anteriorly are the quadriceps femoris. That's it. That's all we need for our class. So the lower limb, right, so these are the calves, but there is another cool name for them, is Gastrocnemius. And the reason they call Gastrocnemius, the way I remember, because they resemble a stomach, like a gastro region. So Gastrocnemius. And these two muscles, medially and laterally, that we see from the back posteriorly, are Soleus muscles, right? So these two Soleus muscles, if we swing, that's the Soleus muscles. They kind of responsible for keeping the balance and posture, basically for balancing. So these are the Gastrocnemius, and these are Soleus muscles. Also, another important is Tibialis anterior muscle. Again, not important insertion and origin. So let me start from lateral side. So this is not this one, right? So this is a mesoter, and this is a this one, no, temporalis, right? The entire region, right? Temporalis and mesoter. So if we'll create a motion, yeah, let me do this, right? So the temporalis and the mesoter, they're responsible for, we can open our jaw, right? So for depression. So that's the muscle. There's both of them, they work collectively, as we already discussed, that the muscles, they work in the group as agonist, another is antagonist, and another group of muscles are synergist. So another important muscle, right? So if we'll go deep down below, is the Bushinator. So the Bushinator is responsible for sucking motion, right? Or like whistling. Bushinator. So that's the Bushinator. If I'll isolate it, right, so you see that muscle is right there. All right, so another important muscle is Orbicularis oris. So we can move our lips. Another circular muscle is Orbicularis Oculi. So we can wink. But it's not just them that are working by themselves. They're working in a group. Again, not important for our class. So this white part is called aponeurosis. We do not really need muscle here, so there should be a tissue. So it goes from the frontal bone all the way to the occipital bone. I forgot two, by the way, yes. So these are the intercostal muscles, right? So the muscles are between costal ribs. And also one really important muscle that I didn't mention is the diaphragm. So let me remove that. So this diaphragm is very important in breathing. So the diaphragm can create a dome shape or can flatten. So when we are breathing in, so the muscle, this muscle is a dome shape. When we're breathing in, we expand our chest, and this dome-shaped muscle, the diaphragm, will flatten. When it flattens, the upper chest will open up and it will give more space for the lungs to fill with air. And then when we breathe out, when we exhale air, so this muscle will take a dome shape, and that will push on the lungs, and that will help us to exhale air. So what I also suggest, go over these 2D images, right, and just simply look at these dots, at the blue dots, and each blue dot is what you're responsible for. And I also forgot to mention this Achilles tendon, right? So this Achilles tendon is one of the longest tendon in human body. So the Achilles tendon connected posteriorly into the calcaneal, and the calcaneus is one of the taluses, one of those 7 taluses. That's our heel, and also connected to gastrocnemius muscles. So please go over this 2D images, and this is it. All right, class. So I hope this will help you in on your midterm. Take care.